That way, to the tower. The wizard must not regain the crystal.
A finale is very important for a show. Everything comes to a definitive end. But what happens when a show ends without a finale? In this video, we're gonna go over the facts of why Thundarr the Barbarian didn't have such an ending. Let's get to it.
My dear viewers, welcome to the future. Can you believe your eyes? Because I cannot. It is approximately the year 3994, baby. The world as we know it has been completely destroyed. In its place lies a savage landscape filled with ruined cities, violent mutants, ancient sorcery, and forgotten technology. Yes, I am talking about none other than Thundarr the Barbarian. Can you imagine that this kind of show was being broadcast in 1980? That alone tells us how unusual this series was for its era. It combined post-apocalyptic science fiction, superhero action, sword and sorcery fantasy, monsters, magic, and remnants of 20th century civilization in a single animated world. Alongside this thrilling vision of Earth's distant future, viewers rooted for Princess Ariel, the bold and furious Ookla the Mok, and of course, the eponymous hero, Thundarr. Yet despite earning a loyal fanbase, the show never received the grand finale it deserved. It didn't receive a concluding story arc, a final confrontation with one ultimate villain, or a permanent resolution for its heroes. Instead, its final original episode was broadcast in 1981, bringing the series to an end after only 21 episodes. That left generations of fans wondering what happened to Thundarr, Ariel, and Ookla, and why the show disappeared so suddenly. Fear not, because all your questions will be answered in this video. We'll break down the final episode, explain why it was never intended as a series finale, examine the circumstances behind the cancellation, and find out what became of the cast, creators, and franchise. Please tighten your seatbelts, my dear passengers, because this ride is going to be extremely exciting. My name is Will, and without further ado, let's start today's video.
Thundarr, remember me? Up here!
Ruby Spears and the Saturday Morning Barbarian. Have you ever wondered how Thundarr the Barbarian reached television every Saturday morning? The series was produced by Ruby Spears Productions for ABC. The studio had been established by Joe Ruby and Ken Spears, two animation veterans who had previously helped create and develop Scooby-Doo, Where Are You? While working at Hanna-Barbera. Thundarr the Barbarian premiered on ABC on October 4th, 1980. 21 episodes were produced across 2 seasons, with the final original episode airing on October 31st, 1981. The show is sometimes described as a Saturday morning version of Conan, but Thundarr was not an official adaptation of Conan the Barbarian. It is also important to clarify that the famous Arnold Schwarzenegger movie Conan the Barbarian was released in 1982, after Thundarr had already ended. Therefore, the animated series could not have derived its name or concept from that particular film. The broader influence of pulp barbarian, sword and sorcery fiction, superhero comics, and characters such as Conan is unmistakable. Thundarr resembles a classic barbarian hero, but his world and weapons separate him from Conan. His signature weapon is the glowing sun sword, an energy blade that naturally invites comparisons with the lightsabers of Star Wars. However, it is not an Atlantean sword or father sword equivalent taken from the Conan films. The settings are also completely different. Conan inhabits the fictional Hyborian age, while Thundarr travels through a devastated future Earth. The opening narration explains that in 1994, a runaway planet passed between Earth and the Moon, unleashing cosmic destruction. 2,000 years later, Earth had been reborn as a world of savagery, super science, and sorcery. The cartoon consequently takes place at approximately the end of the 4th millennium, often identified as around 3994. The series generally used an episodic structure. Thundarr and his companions traveled to different settlements, encountered endangered populations, and confronted wizards, monsters, mutants, or technological threats. However, the statement that the show had no recurring villains would be incorrect. Gemini, the two-faced wizard from the opening episode, later returned in Last Train to Doomsday. Thundarr the Barbarian was principally developed by comic book writer Steve Gerber, who also served as its first story editor. Gerber was already famous for creating Howard the Duck and writing unconventional stories for Marvel Comics. His involvement helps explain why Thundarr often feels like an expansive comic book universe rather than a conventional Saturday morning cartoon. The principal heroic characters were designed by the legendary Alex Toth, not Alex Troth. Jack Kirby was later brought into the production and designed many of its villains, monsters, machines, and supporting characters. His visual influence can be recognized in the enormous technology, elaborate armor, grotesque wizards, and cosmic imagery found throughout the series. The writing team included creators associated with major comic books, including Martin Pasco, Roy Thomas, Mark Evanier, Buzz Dixon, and others. Together, they helped the program build an unusually detailed world despite its short run. That being said, let's move on to our next topic. Thundarr, Ariel, and Ookla before the series. The opening episode does not provide a complete origin story for Thundarr, Ariel, or Ookla. Instead, Secret of the Black Pearl introduces the trio as an already established team confronting the evil wizard Gemini. No, I'm not talking about Gemini AI. Gemini is a two-faced wizard who rules through fear and magic. In the series debut, viewers encounter the ruins of Manhattan, now called Manhat. Gemini eventually animates the Statue of Liberty and uses it to attack Thundarr and his companions. We also encounter the Groundlings, mutated rat-like humanoids who use motorcycles and search for the Black Pearl. That is pure 1980s cartoon madness. A post-apocalyptic barbarian fighting an animated Statue of Liberty while mutated rats ride motorcycles through the ruins of New York. This series later expanded its world with werewolves, vampires, robots, sorcerers, mutants, and surviving pieces of old Earth technology. The heroes are a trio of traveling adventurers: Thundarr, Princess Ariel, and Ookla the Mok. Some of their backstory is revealed in Battle of the Barbarians. Thundarr had once been enslaved by the evil wizard Sabian. Ookla was also associated with Thundarr during this period of captivity, while Ariel helped them escape. Ariel had a personal connection with Sabian, and is generally identified as his stepdaughter. She was educated through his collection of knowledge about the lost civilization of old Earth. The series establishes that Thundarr escaped slavery and eventually took up the Sun Sword, but the original cartoon never gives viewers a complete account of the weapon's creation or every detail of how the trio first came together. The opening narration shows Thundarr bursting his bonds and beginning his struggle against oppression. However, the exact sequence linking his enslavement, Ariel's intervention, his acquisition of the Sun Sword, and the beginning of their travels remained only partially explored in the television series. Unlike Conan in the 1982 film, Thundarr's childhood and enslavement were never shown in a complete chronological origin story. We also never learned whether the trio had an ultimate destination beyond traveling across the world, helping oppressed people and fighting evil wizards. These unanswered questions are part of what made the world feel larger than the 21 episodes viewers actually received.
It was a fake, Thundarr. It had no real magic at all. And neither does...
The final broadcast episode, Prophecy of Peril. Now we have finally reached the part of the video everyone has been waiting for. How did Thundarr the Barbarian actually end? The final original episode was titled Prophecy of Peril. It was Season 2, Episode 8, and was broadcast on October 31st, 1981. However, it wasn't written as a concluding chapter for the entire series. The episode revolves around an evil wizard named Vashtar and a magical object called the Crystal of Prophecy. The crystal reveals that Vashtar can be defeated through the combined power of 3 women. The first is Maya, an elemental shapeshifter who is buried beneath the ruins of Endor. The second is Cinda, a female barbarian from the Canyon of Death whose magical staff gives her tremendous strength. The third is Valerie Storm, a fashion model from Old Earth who has survived into the future through suspended animation. Valerie is not initially an established sorceress. The prophecy anticipates that she will acquire extraordinary power when Vashtar attempts to destroy her. Vashtar learns about the prophecy and attempts to prevent it from being fulfilled. Thundarr, Ariel, and Ookla must locate the 3 women and bring them together. The adventure follows the same basic structure as many earlier episodes. A new villain appears, the heroes undertake a dangerous journey, several unusual characters join the conflict, and the villain's plan is eventually defeated. Most importantly, the episode's central plot is resolved. Maya, Cinda, and Valerie come together, their combined power helps destroy the Gem of Glory that gives Vashtar his strength, and Vashtar is defeated. Therefore, Prophecy of Peril does not end with Valerie remaining permanently imprisoned, the 3 women never meeting, or the prophecy being left unfulfilled. The problem isn't that the episode ends halfway through its own story, the problem is that after the adventure ends, the series simply stops.
Gone!
Prophecy of Peril was never a true series finale. Thundarr the Barbarian followed a largely episodic format. Almost every episode introduced a new settlement, a new endangered population, a new magical artifact, and a new wizard or monstrous enemy for the heroes to confront. Prophecy of Peril follows exactly that pattern. It doesn't contain a final battle against the ultimate ruler of Thundarr's world, because the show never established one permanent arch-enemy who controlled the whole series. It doesn't contain a farewell montage, a final destination for the trio, or a declaration that their mission has been completed. The episode also does not permanently restore human civilization, resolve the future of every kingdom, explain all the remaining mysteries, or develop a conclusive romance between Ariel and Thundarr. However, one mystery mentioned in the original version of the script was already explained. The series does reveal why the moon is broken. The opening narration states that a runaway planet passed between Earth and the moon in 1994, causing cosmic destruction and shattering civilization. The damaged moon is one of the most visible consequences of that catastrophe. What the show doesn't explain is every scientific consequence of that impossible event, or how the world subsequently developed magic, mutants, and super science. At the end of Prophecy of Peril, Vashtar's threat has been defeated, but Thundarr, Ariel, and Ookla still inhabit the same dangerous world. There is no suggestion that they are retiring or separating. We can therefore assume that they simply rode towards another adventure that television audiences were never allowed to see. That is the real ending of Thundarr the Barbarian. Not an unresolved episode, but a continuing journey interrupted by cancellation.
Oh no, don't cut that!
Why was Thundarr the Barbarian cancelled? Now we come to the most important question. Why was a program with such a memorable concept cancelled after only 2 seasons and 21 episodes? A frequently repeated theory claims that Thundarr was cancelled because it was too violent for Saturday morning television. The show certainly faced restrictions concerning violence. It contained sword fights, monsters, slavery, frightening transformations, ruined cities, and evil wizards. Nevertheless, the program was designed to comply with children's television standards. Thundarr usually struck machines, magical beings, weapons, or objects rather than graphically injuring human opponents. There is no strong evidence that violence was the direct reason ABC canceled the series. Mark Evanier, one of the show's writers, gave a different explanation. Evanier described Thundarr as a minor hit that could have continued beyond 2 seasons. According to him, the decisive factor was the enormous influence of producer Gary Marshall and Paramount Television at ABC. Marshall was associated with hugely successful primetime sitcoms, including Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, and Mork and Mindy. Animated programs based on those sitcom properties were developed for Saturday morning television. Evanier stated that Thundarr lost its place to make room for Fonz and the Happy Days gang and the wider wave of sitcom-related cartoons. Therefore, it would be inaccurate to say that Evanier blamed modest or disastrous ratings. His account suggests that Thundarr was a functioning program displaced by networking scheduling priorities and corporate enthusiasm for animated versions of established sitcom brands. Production restrictions and pressure surrounding violence may have affected how stories were written, but they should not be presented as the confirmed cause of cancellation. Thundarr didn't disappear because its final episode failed, nor because the creators deliberately completed the story. It was removed from the schedule even though its world still had enormous storytelling potential.
Will be the victor!
What happened to the voice cast? Now the main question arrives. What happened to the voice cast? First, we must discuss Robert Ridgely, who voiced Thundarr. Ridgely gave the Barbarian his powerful, commanding voice and later appeared in numerous live-action films and television programs. He became a familiar supporting performer and worked in films directed by notable filmmakers, including Mel Brooks and Paul Thomas Anderson. His credits include Robin Hood, Men in Tights, and Boogie Nights. Ridgely died in 1997 at the age of 65. Rest in peace, Thundarr. His voice remains inseparable from the character. Princess Ariel was voiced by Nellie Bellflower. Bellflower later became a successful film producer. She helped develop and produce Finding Neverland, the 2004 film about J.M. Barrie and the family who inspired Peter Pan. Finding Neverland received 7 Academy Award nominations, including a Best Picture nomination shared by producers Richard N. Gladstein and Nellie Bellflower. Therefore, it is accurate to describe Bellflower as an Academy Award-nominated producer, not merely as someone associated with an Oscar-nominated film. Then comes Henry Corden, who provided Ookla the Mok's growls and vocalizations. Corden was also famous for becoming the primary voice of Fred Flintstone after the death of original performer Alan Reed. He continued voicing Fred in numerous Flintstones productions and advertisements for decades. Sadly, he later died in 2005, but his performances as both Fred Flintstone and Ookla remain beloved by animation fans. And with all that said, let us move on to the next topic. What happened to the creators? What happened to the creators after Thundarr ended? The Cancellation did not end Steve Gerber's career. Gerber continued working in comics and animation and contributed to programs including G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, and Dungeons & Dragons. However, it would be insensitive to say that he had no reason to care about Thundarr's cancellation. The program was an important part of his creative career, and the end of any promising series can affect its creators even when they find later work. Steve Gerber died in 2008. Joe Ruby and Ken Spears continued producing animated television through Ruby Spears Productions. The studio's later programs included Saturday Supercade, Mr. T, Alvin and the Chipmunks, and the 1988 Superman animated series. Joe Ruby died in August 2020, and Ken Spears died in November of the same year. Jack Kirby died in 1994. His designs and cosmic imagery in Thundarr remain important examples of how his visual imagination influenced media beyond comic books. However, Kirby did not single-handedly create the principal trio. Alex Toth produced the initial designs for Thundarr, Ariel, and Ookla. Kirby was then heavily involved in designing villains, monsters, machinery, and additional elements of the program's world. The combination of Gerber's concepts, Toth's heroic designs, Kirby's imagination, and Ruby Spears' production gave Thundarr its unmistakable identity. All we can do now is thank these creators for building a world that audiences still remember decades later. The aftermath. Did Thundarr return? Thundarr the Barbarian eventually returned to television, although not through a reboot or continuation. The original 21 episodes were rerun on NBC's Saturday morning schedule in 1983. The show later reached another generation through reruns on Cartoon Network during the 1990s and through other television and streaming outlets. A Milton Bradley board game based on Thundarr was released in 1982. Toynami later released action figures of Thundarr, Ariel, and Ookla in 2004, not 2003. The complete series eventually reached official home video releases. Warner Archive released Thundarr the Barbarian, the complete series, on DVD in 2010. A complete series Blu-ray edition followed in 2021. At least future generations now have access to all 21 episodes in officially released collections. Thank you, Warner Archive, we all say in unison. However, for decades, one major piece was missing. Thundarr had never received a fully published comic book series of his own. A proposed Whitman comic was planned during the original era, and a newspaper strip was also discussed, but those projects did not become an ongoing published continuation. That, however, finally changed in 2026. Thundarr finally received his own comic book. Did I hear that correctly? Thundarr the Barbarian finally has his own comic book series? This is the most important modern update for the franchise. Dynamite Entertainment partnered with Warner Bros. Discovery to publish a new Thundarr the Barbarian comic, written by Jason Aaron and illustrated by Kuber Ball. The first issue was released on February 4th, 2026. The comic presents new stories featuring Thundarr, Ariel, and Ookla, and explores elements of their origins that the original animated series left undeveloped. Rather than reproducing hypothetical missing television episodes exactly as they might have appeared in 1982, the comic expands the world for modern readers while drawing directly from the original cartoon. The opening storyline involves familiar enemies, the Council of Wizards, dangerous changes to the time stream, and new revelations about the heroic trio. Later issues also explore the mysterious history of the Sun Sword and its connection with Lord Sabian, Thundarr, Ariel, and Ookla. This makes the comic especially important because the television series never gave the Sun Sword a complete origin. The comic doesn't retroactively transform Prophecy of Peril into a series finale. Instead, it gives the characters the continuation and expanded mythology that fans had wanted for more than 4 decades. If you want to delve deeper into the comic one panel at a time, you already know who's going to help you. It is, of course, us, Team Lore Lockdown. Don't forget to check out our video exploring the Thundarr the Barbarian comic. The link is in the description below. So, that's it for today, guys. Thundarr the Barbarian did not end with a grand final battle, the death of its hero, or an unresolved cliffhanger. The final episode, Prophecy of Peril, tells a complete standalone adventure in which Vashtar is defeated. The series then stops because ABC cancelled it before another season could be produced. Thundarr, Ariel, and Ookla never completed their mission because their mission was never designed to have one final destination. They were wandering heroes who would continue riding across the devastated Earth, fighting oppression wherever they found it. The television audience simply did not get to accompany them on the next journey. Fortunately, the 2026 comic series has finally opened the door to new stories and long-awaited answers. If you missed the magic of Thundarr the Barbarian and enjoyed this video, make sure to like and share it with your friends. Drop your thoughts about the series and its ending in the comments section down below. Also, don't forget to subscribe to Lore Lockdown and hit the bell icon so that you never miss an update. Until then, I promise that I will see you in the next video with yet another amazing piece of lore to explore.